Hello, makers. This is Pastime in Paradise. This channel is devoted to the exploration of things that you make. I happen to sew and quilt and craft, um, but I'm willing to share whatever you make to make your life more enjoyable. Today, I've completed a project that I've been working on for a long time. It is a quilt called Knight's Garden, and the Knight is spelled Knight, and it's in honor of my mom, Agnes Knight. My mom loved to crochet, and I'm sure you have some of these doilies that she has in your house that I have, and I had quite a few that I had inherited from her. And I wanted to incorporate them into something that I could kind of see every day, kind of a living legacy piece. And since I am a quilter, I did come up with this idea. Now, I'm going to show you different parts of the construction, and I'll write little notes and things like that, and then show you the final um, product at the end. But some thoughts about this. When I quilt, I could be quilting something for years. As the spirit moves me, I handle certain things. I find I get a better product than if I try and push a quilt. Now, this year was I did have 3 weddings, and I had 3 wedding quilts because the people who got married were important to me because they were the children of some of my dearest friends. So I did do quite a bit of quilting within the past 12 months. But this was a labor of love just like the other ones. I don't know if I'm going to be quilting anything else until fall. I like to quilt in the fall and the winter, even though I live where there's not fall and winter. But old habits are hard to avoid. So um, I'm going to show you some of the things that went together to make this quilt. Okay, so I want to kind of walk you through the construction of this quilt. Um, After I came up with the idea, I did commit it to paper and sketch it out. I knew what the center panel was going to be. I knew I wanted a black foundation to showcase the doilies, which were I were going to represent as very large flowers of some type. So the very first thing I did was I used black Kona cotton. It's one of my favorite cottons to use, and I stitched the doilies onto the black centerpiece, and I arranged them in the order that I thought looked attractive color-wise. After securing the flowers in place, I went ahead and found green bias fabric from my stash the um, to make the stems and the leaves, and hand appliqued the leaves, and I stitched the stems in place. After that point, because I knew that this quilt was going to be quite large and I wanted to be able to manage it on my sewing machine. I don't have a free arms a quilting. I wanted a quilting machine. I almost bought one, but I immigrated. I left the country, and therefore that didn't come into fruition, but it was going to happen if I was still living in America. Um, so what I did was I decided to use flannel as my filling rather than um, a fluffy filling, batting, and so I sandwiched the pieces of the front of the center piece between a layer of flannel and then the backing with an Ankara fabric that I found that was perfect for the back of the quilt. It also looked like doilies, and I thought it would be a wonderful way to honor the front of the piece. So when I put them together, it was quite manageable to be able to stipple stitch with my stipple attachment that's on my sewing machine, so that I could freehand draw shapes and everything. So I quilted around the edges of the flowers. The first thing I did was I stitched the hems in place, the stems in place, and it kind of anchored the quilt. And then I stippled inside with my machine, and I rolled one end over as I stippled around all of those shapes. So that's the first thing I did. Then it was quite easy to make the side pieces. I had already made 4 medallions for each side of the edge of the quilt, because that was the design I was going to use. So I had 4 orange doilies, thank goodness, I had 4 of those. So I did those on a black background. I stippled those individually, but I was careful to not stipple all the way to the edge. I left at least a quarter of it to a half inch on each side of these pieces so that I could connect them. All right, so after that, then was the fun part. I went to my stash and I found different fabrics that were reflected in the quilt and that I wanted to use to accent the quilt. So I like purples and greens and yellows and oranges and tie-dyes and batiks and golds and greens and all those. It was very fun. Each one of those squares was 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Then I connected them in strips of 5 because I figured out when you attached 5 in a row, that was the same width as the medallions or the borders of the quilt. I made 2 short borders on one side and one very long one on the top and the bottom. And hopefully those pictures you're seeing those pictures. Let's see. After I completed those, I quilted the squares in place, and I will show you some of that right here. Quilted it in space, I ended up with these 4 borders that you can see over here, as well as I attached the medallions to the shorter borders. So I put a medallion on the top and a medallion on the bottom, and a medallion on the top and a medallion on the bottom. Then I was ready to connect everything. How I connected the medallions to the short border is exactly how I connected it to the larger piece in the middle. I sewed together the black on the medallion and the black and the edge of the 5 square border, and I sewed them, leaving the back Ankara print loose on both sides because I was going to come back, fold one edge over after I trimmed and steamed it shut, and folded another one over the top, pinned it in place, and that's where I was going to do most of my handwork. So that allowed me to have 4 borders already quilted, and then I attached them to the center, and the only thing left to do was to put the border on and then show you the final piece. This quilt was a joy to make. There was so much history. I ironed a lot of these doilies and moved these doilies around because one of my jobs was polishing furniture when I was a kid. So I had quite a lot of memories, and it helped bring my mom the memories of her as I did each piece. I do not have the patience for the intricate way in which those tiny crochet needles and those intricate whorl patterns and things like I don't have the patience for that, but she did. She had the mind and the patience for this. So I think she's looking down on me and she's happy. I placed it on the bed in the master bedroom here, which we can still consider her room. So I think she'd like it. I think you'd like it too if you happen to have doilies in your house and you're a quilter. There's a way to bring them alive. I hope you like this quilt. Keep making.